Madam Lillian Kiamba, Commissioner of the National Police Service Commission, Ms. Anne Makori, Chairperson of IPOA, to all other colleagues, friends, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. This is one of the hardest things about learning to be a Kenyan to do, is the protocols observed. After a 2-year journey to officially launch the Muamko Mpya manual and resource materials, for us at Greenstring Network, it is a landmark event. Let me explain why. Many of you know Kenyans have always taken the lead in peacebuilding and peacebuilding work in Africa and globally. However, the post-election violence in Kenya in 2007 and 2008 was a turning point for many of us peacebuilders, practitioners and scholars. In the peacebuilding community, we had to confront the big question. After decades of peacebuilding in Kenya, why did we turn on each other like we did at that time? A number of peacebuilders met in a series of candid and crucial reflections in 2008. One thing that stood out, that in our previous analysis, we had not carefully considered how individual and collective trauma was feeding into electoral violence. Practitioners and scholars like the late Deka Abdi Ibrahim, the late Doreen Ruto, Dr. Tekla Namachanga Wanjala, Dr. Alex Kamwara, Dr. Babu Ayendo, all of them advocated for an emphasis on community-based healing to add to the core component of peacebuilding practice, to contribute to breaking the cycles of violence, not only for elections, but in general. So this trauma-informed approach is a combination of community agency, indigenous African traditions of healing, organic processes of healing, neurobiology, restorative justice, and peace-building approaches. It's a multidisciplinary approach. Post-2008, Deka Abdi Ibrahim taught us peacebuilders not to wallow in victimhood. Her foundation saying was, "I refuse to be a victim, I am a resource for peace." It became the mantra, and it went out across the country and even the world. For us at GSN, this was a key lesson that we learned, was to be healers and not to be victims. I worked closely with the late Deka, who constantly sang this mantra, that we were going to transform electoral violence, but also violence in general, if we could start to heal the country and break these cycles of violence. I first met Kenyan police officers in Kosovo, serving in the UN peacekeeping missions. I met them in Sierra Leone and Liberia and South Sudan. I was then functioning and working with the US Embassy and other NGOs. I met the finest, most hardworking professionals of officers from the Kenyan Police Office who were conducting trainings, maintaining peace, and preparing communities for that peace. Many of you might be wondering about this Maina in my name. Let me tell you a story. It was in Kosovo, where I met Maina Maduma, my husband, who happens to be here. And when he persuaded me that we moved back to Kenya 14 years ago, I was confronted with a different story of police officers. The general citizens' perceptions of the police was inconsistent with what I knew to be true of the officers that I had met in the UN missions. In short, after the post-election violence, when we interacted with Wananchi, we found they were hurt and angry, if not at all, but with most of the security agents. My experience in Kosovo and other peacekeeping missions, and my experiences here in Kenya, my team and I at GSN were more committed to engage with the security actors in Kenya. Deka taught us, we refuse to be victims, we need to function as resources for peace. In 2016, GSN was successful in seeking a grant from the State Department, one that asked us to develop trauma healing with the police. We were a brand new Kenyan NGO, and we had no idea where to start. But one, Mukhtar Ogli from the Office of the President, provided us with the initial links and supported and introduced us to several officers who would also try to undertake this work within the National Police Service. We were also implementing Kumekucha at the community level. If you've seen the paintings out there, half are for Muamko Mpya and the other half are for Kumekucha. Kumekucha is a community-based healing program that is very similar in what we've based Muamko Mpya off of. But in Lamu, Tana River, and Kilifi, where we were initially working, people said, this is really good. We really like this program. We need healing. But please, will you start working with the police? They had an empathy because they knew that the police officers were carrying a huge burden for the country, and that without the healing being also put to the police, they would not be able to heal at the community level alone. Therefore, we adapted Kumekucha to Muamko Mpya. It was organic, I'd say even seamless. The process built on positive energies, lessons and wisdoms from communities that our police serve. Like the Kumekucha community program, the materials and the resources for Muamko Mpya that we're launching today follow the same process. The stories emerged from officers. The concepts were developed and collaboratively developed with the artists at the Dusty Pohu you've met earlier today. We've rediscovered that when we work together, we promote everyone's healing and well-being. In the last 2 years, and I'll just finish, we've learned 3 key lessons. That civil society can work with the police, and there are a number of key police officers that I'd like to just point out. I know you're not supposed to do this in the police, but I'd like to point out Mr. Nauma here in the front row and the key role that he's played in shepherding this process into the National Police Service. And often we also assume from civil society that the police are not doing anything to help the well-being and the psychosocial support for the officers. But we are pleasantly surprised that there are internal efforts that exist, and all we're doing is building on what already exists. And the third is the journey we've embarked on was much larger than we had envisioned. If communities and security actors together could join in mutual healing, it would impact our whole nation in a very significant way. It's been a joy to be a part of this pilot process, to develop the stories and the content, to expand the conceptual base of what trauma-informed policing means in Kenya, to jointly co-facilitate leadership trainings, to work with the training institutions like Kiganjo and the other training institutions we've worked with. In this regard, as GSN, we continue to be committed to moving forward with the healing process within the police, but also at the community level. We've learned from this pilot process that community trauma-informed policing is possible, it's urgent, and it's needed. So we in the GSN family firmly believe that all of us, uniformed and non-uniformed, can and should refuse to be victims and be resources for peace. Thank you very much.